Hello, and thanks for joining us for the Prepped and Polished radio show. I'm your host, Alexis Avila, licensed guidance counselor, private tutor, and founder of Prepped and Polished LLC Tutoring and Test Prep in beautiful South Natick, Massachusetts. The Prepped and Polished radio show is your educational insider. Our show is brought to you by Prepped and Polished LLC, where I'm the principal educator. To learn more about our firm, please visit preppedandpolished.com. Thank you to everyone who's listening to the program. We appreciate you taking interest in the information we bring to families and educators around the globe. For future shows, up-to-date information and ongoing relevant educational news, please join our Facebook community by searching for Prepped and Polished and then clicking like, and you can follow us on Twitter. The hashtag or whatever it's called is @PreppedPolished. Joining our show today is David Poles. David is founder of Newtown Counseling Center in Newton Center, Massachusetts, where he helps others grow to maximize their full potential. David is a licensed mental health counselor, certified rehabilitation counselor, and a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. Since 1995, David has committed his professional life to assisting clients in becoming more successful. One of David's specialties is in helping late-age adolescent males learn how to reduce painful emotions while staying sober. We're delighted to have David on our show. He's going to share with us about what's going on today with teens, give us some tips on how teenagers can stay sober, stay happy, especially through those turbulent adolescent years. Now, before we start, I just want to make sure our listeners have our contact info. Our email address is radio@preppedandpolished.com. If you'd like to submit a question at any time, you can use that email address. Often our listeners will have questions as they're listening or afterwards. We always appreciate hearing from our listeners, so you can email us at any time at radio@preppedandpolished.com. Okay, David, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you, Alexis, for having me.
Good, good. So tell me something. Newton seems to be a safe, pretty safe happening town. Do you actually have a lot of teenagers in Newton who are actually dealing with anger issues?
Well, actually, yes. There is a large amount of drug use that takes place in the suburbs, and Newton certainly isn't exempt from that. And unmanageable emotions usually go with drug use, depression, anger, anxiety. So, unfortunately, yes, that is part of the landscape of probably most affluent communities, and it doesn't discriminate. Drug use and anger certainly can go with that.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because it seems like the stigma is with the drug use is we hear about it in the inner cities, but to hear that it goes over to the suburbs is interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
So, David, can you start out by telling us a little bit about what is Newtown Counseling Center and what motivated you to start your own practice?
Sure. So it's a one-person, one-man operation. I'm the owner, and I have one employee. That's myself. And I've been interested in owning my own business since going to graduate school at UMass Boston. When I started there in 1998, I had thought about private practice. I think many of us getting into this field of psychology aspire to that, and then we get experience from working at various locations, working for somebody. So that's always been an interest of mine ever since going to graduate school. And I first worked in the field of social services in 1995 after I got my undergraduate degree. I worked for a DYS facility on Cape Cod at an Upward Bound program in Brewster. And so that exposed me to working with adolescents. And I've worked at a variety of locations. I've worked at homeless shelter for men. I've worked at a substance abuse treatment program at a hospital. But in terms of wanting to work for myself, I think that's something that many of us aspire to when we're in graduate school, and not all of us do. But it's a different skill set, certainly learning how to be a business person versus just providing the services. But it's
Absolutely.
exciting. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. And I had a chance actually in the last couple of months to see your space, and it's a beautiful space, and I'm sure your patients love opening up to you there.
No, they seem pretty happy there. It's it's MBTA accessible, and it's accessible for clients with disabilities. I had one gentleman who used a wheelchair, and he was able to get in and out of there pretty easily. So,
that's great. That's always helpful.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit about teens. So now, is helping teenage males to overcome anger and to stay sober, I mean, is it as stressful a task as I think it is? Because I don't think I could do it myself. So I commend you. And how do you help teenagers with their problems?
Sure. Well, it's certainly challenging, but it's not impossible. But I try not to operate in a vacuum. I stress the importance of having parental assistance as well, because I think part of the job is giving them education and support so that they can guide their clients. If it's pertaining to substance abuse, certainly there's I see a lot of enabling. So part of my job is to educate them. If it's as far as working with the clients, no, it's challenging, but it's rewarding.
Definitely.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely, sure did. Now, I'm sure you've seen the problems teenagers deal with evolve over the years, especially since you started in the early 2000s. At least I've observed, teenagers are, a lot different, from when I was a teen. Now, have you seen a change in teens over the past 10 years? Are the problems they face today the same, or are they different?
Well, that's a good question, Alexis. I was thinking about that. I even went back to 1995 when I first entered the field of social services, and I thought about the issues that teens dealt with back then versus now, and there's a lot of similarities. Drug use certainly is still an issue. Peer pressure, conflicts with parents, adolescents being rebellious,
right.
Hormonal changes, that's still the same.
Right.
Now, there's different types of drugs available.
Really?
When I was working in 1995 with the population I work with, there wasn't as much focus on opiates as there is now. There's pretty widespread usage of various opiates like OxyContin and Percocets and heroin. So I don't remember seeing that as much. But I'd say also similarly, it definitely a lot of problems can be traced back to the home in terms of parenting. Not to blame anybody, but parents certainly have a major role in terms of how things are going with the child.
Right.
And so that's the good news too. I mean, they can be very influential. They can set better boundaries with adolescents, and through education, that certainly can take place. As far as differences, I think there's more in terms of technology that's out there, Facebook and Twitter and texting and things like that. That certainly wasn't around back then.
And podcasts.
And podcasts like this, right?
Yeah.
And maybe more pressure too with the economy. I think maybe there's a lot of pressure on kids now from their parents in order to help them get into good schools. More of a focus on grades, and if more than ever, it's so important to think about one's future with the economy and whatnot. So that's probably a big difference too if we're talking about changes between then and now.
Definitely. Do you, just a quick follow-up? Would like one of your suggestions to a student who is just kind of maybe struggling with anger and is kind of subjected to the Facebook, Twitters, is one of your suggestions to him maybe to, put that aside and allocate some time away from these technological mediums? Or
sure, if that is a trigger for the person's anger.
Right.
I have one client right now who he's a pretty temperamental guy. He's in his early 20s, but one of the things that he does historically when he's gotten angry is he's done a lot of venting via Facebook, and it's gotten to the point where it can be abusive towards others. So that's something that he should not be doing. But in terms, I have some tips here in terms of how an adolescent can manage his or her anger. I can get into those if you want, or Let's do that in a little bit. Okay, sure.
I don't really know how to phrase this question, but we do have a guest on the show who texted us a couple fragments of a question.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to piecemeal these together. But guest 3 on our show says made a comment that some people go through adolescence from childhood to adulthood in one day. Have you witnessed this? So I don't know if that's an answerable question, but
I certainly have.
Kids growing up fast now, I guess, is the question.
Oh, well, I think so. In some ways, they are. They're kids, adolescents. They're very bright. They're exposed to more now than I ever was at that age. They are bright. They're more prepared for college. They're more exposed to the good and bad in the media. So in some ways, yeah, they do grow up a lot sooner. Sure.
Wow.
Yeah. That can be a good thing. It's a double-edged sword. It depends on the upbringing too. Like a child in an abusive upbringing, where parents are always fighting, they're forced to grow up in some ways that aren't healthy. If they're exposed to substance abuse or mental illness or domestic violence, they're forced to grow up in a hurry. And a lot of it all goes back to the parents and how the kids are raised. But yeah, in some ways that's true. Sure.
Yeah, that really resonates. That makes a lot of sense. David, what are some general tips you can offer teenagers who are trying to stay happy, stay grounded through those turbulent, confusing adolescent years? I don't know about you, but I wish I had some tips through my adolescent years. It's a confusing time, but what do you tend to do? What are some tips that you can give teens?
Sure. Well, it's so important for teens to have someone to talk to. Ideally, the parents. For example, maybe finding a time that the teen and his or her parents can be comfortable and relax together. Make sure that there's no distraction and the two of them can talk. That's certainly one tip for maybe improving the relationship with a teen's parents. Let's see, it's important to have healthy friendships.
Right.
Knowing who it is that you're hanging out with, having hobbies, doing what you want, being passionate, having goals, sports. Those are certainly ways to improve one's happiness as a teen.
Let me just ask you a quick question. What if the student really is not athletic? Maybe he's athletic, but he doesn't really want to get up at 7 a.m. on Sunday to go to those football practices, because the athletics, you have to be very committed, and what are there other opportunities for some of these students to stay motivated and not have to do a varsity sport, say?
Sure. I have one client. I've worked with him since he was a teen, and one of the things he got into was band music. He got involved in that. Nowadays, schools are offering a variety of clubs that somebody could join. So I don't think you just limit it to sports.
Right.
I think a lot of it, I don't mean to be repetitive, but I think the parents can be very influential too. Sometimes parents can be very judgmental and really try to force things on a teen. And so I think if the parents are cultivating a liberal and open-minded perspective as far as whatever it is the teen wants to do, assuming it's healthy, then I think that should be the premise of allowing the teen to want to explore some different options.
Absolutely.
Could be reading. It could be music. It doesn't have to be football.
That's really interesting. That's enlightening. Well, thank you very much, David. That was very helpful. And this wraps up our show for today with David Poles of Newtown Counseling Center. Now, please visit newtowncounselingcenter.com. newtowncounselingcenter.com to learn more about David's practice. And while you're there, I highly encourage you to ask David to add you as a subscriber to his informative and inspirational newsletters. I get them myself about once or twice a month, and I'll tell you, he gives you tips on how to stay happy for both teenagers and adults. And it's very encouraging, so I really appreciate those newsletters, David.
Thank you, Alexis. I appreciate your taking the time to have me on your show.
Sure, anytime. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on the Prepped and Polished Radio Show.